Struggling to leverage Microsoft Enterprise solutions? At C5 Insight, we understand the intersection between technology, business, and people.
My name is Grant Dess. I know I met many of y'all last week, but I'm a principal solution engineer here at Microsoft. I've been here a little over 7.5 years. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm on our AI workforce team, which is primarily focused on things like Copilot, Copilot Studio, and the like. So I'm really excited to talk to you today a bit about our own journey here at Microsoft, what we call our Customer Zero story, because we, just like many of you, we had to start somewhere with this, right? And as we dove into AI, we have our own story. We learned a ton. We did many things right. We did many things wrong. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So really my goal today is to give you an inside look at how we embraced AI as a company, how we even thought through business processes, all that good stuff. We'll dig into that a bit. And really my second goal with this is to give you a bit of a blueprint as you are on your own journey, because I know there's not a whole lot of blueprints out there for AI transformations yet. I think we're starting to see those, but again, for Microsoft, not because it's perfect, but I think it will give you a lot of ideas for your own journey, and hopefully you can learn from some of the things that we learned as we went through it. I did just want to set the stage. I'm going to be using a couple terms as we go, and want to be sure that those are clear just going forward. The first is, this is really the overall Microsoft vision for what AI means for us. So we have every user, right? Every person, human person, has an AI assistant. And at Microsoft, we call that Copilot. So you've got your AI assistant, and we often refer to that as the UI for AI, which is a kind of nerdy way to say that that's really the gateway, right? Like that's the open door into all things AI, where it could be generative AI, it could be conversational AI, and it can also be agents, right? So as you build you or your organization builds agents to handle certain tasks, or even gets into, we'll talk about this, but agents working within a team, still keeping the human in the loop, but all of that is where Copilot's kind of the gateway into that overall experience. So just, again, a couple terms to make sure that that makes sense as we discuss that going forward. So starting off, overall at Microsoft, of course, we, as this all has come up very quickly, right? AI was not new to Microsoft. We've been in the AI space for really decades now. Ever since I started, again, 7.5 years, we'll call it, ago, we had a full-blown data and AI team that was promoting those products. A lot of the products that are now part of Copilot and part of even like AI Foundry, if you've heard of that, those pieces, many of those pieces have been around a long time, but now they're being packaged up a bit more collectively into AI. So all that to say, we've been in the space a long time, but we still had to go on our own journey for every employee to get them on board as we ourselves became frontier. If you don't know what that means, we talked a lot about it last week. As Tracy mentioned, I encourage you to go back if you missed that webinar last week, just about what becoming a frontier firm is all about. Essentially, that means that you're being AI first in your approach to business process, to work as we know it, right? You're letting AI do some of those mundane tasks that humans might not enjoy doing as much. And then that's opening up, time and effort for the humans to focus on work that humans enjoy and that they excel at. So this was our overall goal here, to achieve unimagined business outcomes, which sounds a little lofty and generic, but we did have some very specific outcomes that we went into thinking through when we approached AI as well. So we'll discuss those. First off, I do want to explain a little bit that this is it's a little bit of a subsection of Microsoft. It's still a really big subsection, but when I talk about Microsoft's Customer Zero story today, it's not every employee in the world who works at Microsoft. That's last I heard, a little over 200,000 employees. This is a small group of that that is only 60,000 employees, and it's what we call MCAPS. That stands for Microsoft Customer and Partner Solutions. So I'm a part of that organization. It's a lot of our sales teams. It's a lot of our technical sales teams, as well as things like partner support. So as you can see on the slide, 500,000 partners that we work with. C5 Insight being a really great one that we love working with. This is like MCAPS as a whole. It's 60,000 employees. We serve millions of customers, and we have 100 different subsidiaries all over the globe. So a big group, but again, just wanted to help you understand the scope of this a bit. We really went in with two main goals with this, or two main metrics. And the first of those is actually really embarrassing, to be honest. What we were finding is that 70% of our sellers' time was actually spent on things that wasn't selling, right? So they were focused on administrative tasks. They were focused on meetings before the meetings, meetings after the meetings, calls after the calls, a lot of internal calls, a lot of, we all know the drill, right? We know how this works, but 70% is a lot. And the hope was, as we implemented Copilot and other, agentic features as well, is that we were helping humans focus on what we actually hired them to do, right? Primarily, which is time with our customers and partners. The second one is CAGR, and if you're not familiar with that, that is talking about the compound annual growth rate of the overall AI market size. So the point here is that we saw a huge opportunity for, even as we go forward selling AI, we need to be able to understand it, right? And be able to use it in a way that's effective so that we can help our customers and partners do that as well. And obviously, as you see on the screen, it's just that prediction of the overall expansion of that was also a big driver for us. Okay, so let's get into kind of the framework for how we thought about success as we implemented AI in Microsoft. There were really four main buckets, and this has now become a bit of a North Star for us as we continue even now to add more agents, to add more features or more possibilities that we use AI for. They usually go through this kind of, we filter them through these four main buckets. So the first is enriching employee experiences. Focused on internal employees, how do we help folks do their job better? How do we, again, clear out some of those mundane tasks so that they can have time to create, have time to do things that humans are really good at, but also boost things like productivity and even well-being, right? Making sure that they're happy doing the jobs that they're doing. Do they enjoy it? The second one is reinventing the customer and the engagement with customers. So I think about this as, how can we better connect with customers? And for Microsoft, our partners are also our customers, right? How do we better connect with both customers and partners in a tailored way, right? In a personalized way, but also in a way that scales, right? So that as we are working at a larger scale than we ever have before, right? That we can take that scale and still make it meaningful, and it doesn't just feel like we're rolling through kind of a hamster wheel of a process, right? Oh, pardon me. The third one here is reshaping business processes. And the first step here is thinking about all the ways that we have built business processes in the past, right? Over decades and decades, we've done it in a really similar way. And those traditional business processes are focused, they're actually artifacts now of human-centric processes, because that's primarily what we had to work with, right? If we had a bigger problem, we just threw more humans at it. Now with the advent of AI, we're rethinking those, reshaping those business processes to say, how can AI handle the bulk of the work here, right? Rather than having 20 humans in the loop, can we have less humans in the loop, not having to go approve every single thing, not having to go make every single decision, but having AI handle the bulk of that as we can, and then allowing the humans to really just focus on the ones that need their focus, right? freeing up more time, freeing up more space for them to go do other things. And then fourthly, bending the curve on innovation. Right now, we're in such a space, and we say this at Microsoft all the time, that if we're not innovating, we're not relevant, right? So that is really the crux of where we are, especially in the technology world, but I think it applies to most industries, that we have to think about the products that we take to market, that those are improving, that we're making those in the best way we can at scale, but then also our go-to-market strategies, rethinking those constantly, right? Are we staying up with trends that are going on? Are we trying to be creative in that space, right, rather than just reactive? And that is all about how we bend the curve there. So I know I spent a lot of time on this slide, but it's a really important one. As you think about your own framework, I encourage you to think in terms of these buckets, because I think it can help you define some metrics and some KPIs for where change might really come when it comes to things like Copilot and agents and AI at large. So this is just another view. If you notice, let me get my little laser going here. If you notice on the left-hand side, these are the same 4 buckets, right? Enriching employee experiences, all the way bending the curve on innovation. But we've just added in how we did that, right? So for Copilot Immersion, for AI-infused sales processes, we have some metrics there. These are ours. Your mileage may vary, right? Depending on what your priorities are and how you implement this. For us, sales was a very natural place to start because we had so much time where folks were distracted. They were having trouble, again, that 70% number where they're busy doing things that were really irrelevant to their main job. That led to things like increased revenue per head, right? Faster deal closure. Things that if you're a sales manager, you're probably drooling at those numbers, right? Because it made a huge difference for us. Increased pipeline growth, right? This was on the employee side. If we look at that customer engagement a bit, when it comes to things like support cases, being able to handle those faster, increase self-service, conversion rates from leads to opportunities. And this was actually done in an agentic way where the agent was handling a ton of that, really that workload. I'm not going to read all these to you, but you get the idea. There's, reshaping quotas, negotiations. GitHub was a really key way that we bent the curve on innovation in terms of how we put code to market. I realize that might not apply to everyone, but for us at Microsoft, that was a piece of even increasing developer productivity. So one other point to make here is just as you are going on in your own transformation, I encourage you to think about if you're sharing this story with someone, let's say a year or 2 from now, once you've made it through some of your own transformation, what would that story be, right? What are some of those metrics that you're chasing? Because I think if you start with a bit of a vision and you're working towards it as you go, now you're chipping away at what you're aiming at, rather than just throwing spaghetti on the wall and saying, well, it seems like AI will change something. Let's find out what it is, right? It becomes really hard to measure that way. So for us, these were a lot of some key metrics that we tracked very diligently. So again, if you joined us last week, we talked about that frontier firm approach. I'm not going to harp on this too much, especially for those of you who heard it, but talking through humans with assistants, again with Copilot, that's really the first stage of AI transformation. Second being human to agent teams, where agents are going off doing specific tasks and bringing it right back to the human. And then third is human-led agent operated, where you actually have teams of agents working with other teams of both humans and agents. They may go off for a longer period of time. And the human is basically just staying in the loop on that and making sure, they're providing the guardrails for things like timelines and that those tasks are focused. So for most folks that we talk to at Microsoft right now, I would say they are somewhere in between stage 1 and stage 2, right? Getting Copilot up and running, that AI assistant, and then getting some of those agents off the ground. The reason I bring this up now is, again, this is just a way for us at Microsoft, we're reviewing that there were different, those same metrics, those same areas of change, this is kind of what that looked like for us. Really, the only one that was agent-led work was this autonomous agent we had that was scaling our small medium business, in terms of taking all these leads, all these signals from our customers. If you go to our website and you're looking at some things, it's taking those leads and automatically doing some work with those to try to convert those to a bit more qualified opportunity. So for us, that was the main way that true agent-led work was happening. But if you notice, there were a lot of other agents that were helping us get work done faster as well. So an interesting view here, again, if you're thinking through kind of where that technology is being used in these different buckets, I think that can help you just see a little bit clearer vision going forward. So here's one specific use case. Copilot Immersion was at the beginning of that last slide in terms of AI assistance. This is one, I saw this firsthand as an employee. The way that this happened for us is that, first off, it was started from the top down. So we were actually given very specific metrics as employees to say, we expect you to open and ask questions to Copilot every day, right? Every day that you're working. And they were tracking that in terms of daily active use, weekly active use, and even monthly active use. They then took those usage rates, and we had competitions, right? Between teams, between operating units, right? Like, who's using Copilot the most? Where are you using it? Is it in Outlook, right? Is it in Teams? Is it going directly to like a Copilot chat through Bing or through Edge, excuse me, or through other sort of paths there. So those things were analyzed very heavily, but it was pushed from the top down as this is the expectation. I also do remember a leader of mine, and this was actually, if I get this right, my boss's 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 boss. He was talking to us and saying, I have carved out 2 hours every day to learn more about AI, to practice using AI, and to learn this because it is the future, right? Now, this was, again, 1.5 to 2 years ago. But I remember thinking, my gosh, if he can do it at his level and carve out so much time for this, it's got to be important, right? And that, I felt like in a lot of ways that gave me permission to go do the same and to take time to really take this seriously and learn it. Now, with that said, when we rolled this Copilot initiative out, if I recall, it was during Q4 for us. Everybody's super busy. There's a lot going on, and really, to be honest, like the initial reaction was, here's one more thing we have to learn, right? Here's one more thing that we have to do in a long list of things that we already have to do. And a lot of times I would go out at those first couple weeks, especially, I would open up Copilot, I'd ask it some dumb question, and I'd close it back out. I was like, check the box, we're done, right? But what happened over time for me personally, and there were probably other employees taking it a lot more seriously, but for me, over time, after a couple weeks of that, I started asking it better questions. If I had a little extra time, I would throw a more detailed question at it. Maybe I'd give it a file to look at and say, what are your thoughts on this? I started exploring it, and then I started seeing value out of it as I asked those questions. So then, as I saw value in it, I talked to my direct team, right, a smaller group. I would say, hey, I asked it this. It was actually really interesting what happened because it was looking in Teams at some messages. It was referencing those. I didn't realize it looked into SharePoint and some of this other data. It was giving me really educated answers, and we started sharing what we learned, right? Once that happens, then, as you think about user adoption, now, instead of this just being from the top down, it became a bottom-up approach, right? Like our teams were sharing insights with each other. Hey, I tried this prompt, try this out. What happens when this, we're learning different things together, and we're making it our own. So all that to say, that was huge, right? In terms of just my own personal adoption, but I think that's what I saw at Microsoft happen a lot. If you notice down at the bottom, we've got some examples here of, we talked about prompt campaigns, talking about, Copilot scenarios, how that aligns to specific business use cases. That's huge. And even, having listening channels, observations, those smaller groups. If you have a company-wide call and you're asking people how they're using AI, people probably aren't going to talk about it a whole lot, right? But if it's a specific group that has a common goal, those groups can really learn from each other along the way. I'm going to speed up just a little bit here in the interest of time, but here's a few ideas of where to start if you're looking at these, asking where to begin. For us, again, it was where sellers' time is being taken away from their main goal, right? Think about why you hired certain employees to your organization. And if they're spending the bulk of their time doing other things, it's a great place to focus AI to try to get them refocused on the main thing. Think through those areas of repetitive tasks. Again, those are processes that are ripe for looking at how AI can help. Think about significant cost. I think that one probably goes without saying, but if you've got some big budget projects that are just starting, start thinking like, how can we inject AI into this? It might actually even make those projects cheaper along the way. And then think about the processes you have with a lot of bottlenecks or a lot of handoffs, right? If it's going through many, many different people, AI can help streamline those things. And sometimes it's not even that AI has to be in that yet, but you start automating the process itself, and then you can learn decision points that AI may or may not be able to handle. I don't want to do this talk without mentioning responsible AI. We're not going to get into it in detail today, but for us, we use the NIST kind of approach as Microsoft. So that's the National Institute for Standards and Technology. We use their risk management framework here, but you can't do an AI project without thinking through governance, without thinking through how you measure what's happening. And this is such an ongoing thing for us. Even though we have officially adopted Copilot, right? We are still sending out, there's prompts of the week, there's a lot of ongoing training and usage details, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes happening as well, where there's both proactive and reactive measures, where they're looking at how Copilot's being used. Are we using it responsibly? Is it secure? How are we using it with our customers, with our partners, et cetera, to make sure that these things are being developed and used the way they ought to be? We're going to talk a little more about responsible AI and even the human-centric side of that next week. So if that's something you are interested in digging into, we'll talk about more next time. And then lastly, I just wanted to share this slide as well. Some of our key learnings. I could talk about this slide for another 30 minutes. I won't do that. But thinking through change management, such a critical piece, right? This is a human project first. The technology it's awesome. It's fun to learn and see. But really, ultimately, when you think about this for your organizations, I encourage you to think about it as a human project, because you're changing the way people work, right? And that's not a small thing. It's not just a tool set that they use like, the Office suite, for example. It's deeper than that. It really is changing the way even people think about work, right? It's an emotional thing for a lot of folks. So that change management, adoption, it's so critical, and thinking that through. One other quick story it was actually something that we had to overcome at Microsoft. They got a lot of pushback at the beginning because Copilot was pushed to us, and there was a big resistance because people said, I don't want to train AI to just take my job. Right? That was a very real fear, especially at Microsoft, where most of us are technologists to some degree, right? We kind of saw the future coming, and it was like, this isn't what it's about. They slowed down, right? They slowed down the implementation to back up to the why. Here's why what we're doing, why this is so important and instrumental in how we go forward for Microsoft as a whole. But they even talked a lot about how can AI help shape our careers as employees, right? Backing up, leading with empathy, thinking through that human experience a bit more, that made a huge difference in how that overall message was even received for us. We talked about keeping responsible AI top of mind, creating a culture for upskilling. This one's so huge, just having a curiosity kind of mindset, a growth mindset. and encouraging your people to try new things, right? Try new things, make mistakes. If you get a hallucination, what are you going to do with that, right? But making sure that, it's still encouraged to keep upskilling and learning more and being curious. At the same time, thinking holistically, the big picture, how does this align to business outcomes and objectives that you're striving for? That is very critical. And then last but not least, the ROI. I feel like I've had more ROI conversations in the last few months than I've had even in years, right, at Microsoft, because folks are wanting to be sure they measure how this changes, right? How does this change our business? How does this we could put AI everywhere, but how do we put that in strategic places where we know that payoff will happen, right? That can really help you prioritize the users that you're focused on, where you're starting, and then you can always expand out from there. Do join us next week. We'd love to talk to you a bit more about leading responsibly with AI. And Tracy, I don't know if we have anything else we want to dive into for today.
Thanks, Grant. As another person that's currently going through Customer Zero as well here at C5, I love all of this, and we're kind of following along. A lot of great information. Please join us next week. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.